Hello and welcome back to the Schooner Pod. I'm Bobby Howard. With me is Jamison Maxwell. And folks, the spring game has come and gone. Much ado about nothing on the weather, by the way. And look, the game frankly doesn't matter. We'll forget about a lot of this. Honestly, Jamison, we were talking before the show. I think I've already forgotten a lot of this because of the Thunder yesterday being as crazy as it was. But we still got to talk about it because this is our last bit of football action until August 30th. And just overall, first thoughts about everything. What were your thoughts about the spring game?
Yeah, my big thing is I was keyed in on the scoreboard because I was waiting for that guy who's making the points go either way to have some collusion. But we didn't even have any opportunity for the defense to score at the beginning of the game for him to collude. Like near the end of the game, I'm going to be honest, I was working on Saturday, so I didn't really catch the majority of the third and fourth quarter live. I watched like replays and highlights, but I don't know if there was much collusion at all. Did you catch any?
I feel like I caught a little bit of shenanigans at one point. I feel like 2 points just randomly showed up at one point for the defense. But no, I mean, it was pretty straightforward, really across the board. The defense did let me down. They not only did they not cover the spread, they lost straight up, which is fine. It's whatever. I got to see a General Booty 34-yard rushing touchdown, so that made it all worth it in the end. Dude has wheels. But no, it was it was just kind of there. I think some of it was dampened by they completely cut out the party at the Palace, completely canceled that. So there wasn't really much milling around there. We just kind of hung out on Campus Quarter the whole time, which was nice. But overall, the vibe was just kind of sleepy.
Was it loud at all in the arena? Was there any like moments where they got excited, like the Deion Burks touchdown?
Deion Burks, like that's, if we wanted to emphasize one thing, it's Deion Burks. And I was having a conversation before the game, and someone we're talking about this pod, and my friend Thomas was like, "Yeah, I can't wait for all of your overreactions about Deion Burks. I'm sure that'll be plenty." And I kind of laughed it off. But no, that dude is a burner. He was awesome. We were kind of anticipating him being awesome. I think before the show or before the spring game, he lived up to the hype and more. Granted, it was against a defense without Billy Bowman,
Michael Boganowski, and Reggie Powers. Like it really, come on.
Yeah. So he was doing it against not the best of competition, but it was impressive. You definitely saw the speed, and you saw how he could be a really potent deep threat for Jackson Arnold. So
yeah,
I was
he's
very
the real
impressed.
deal. He's the absolute real deal. People can talk about overreaction, but we already had high thoughts of him, like you said, Bobby, and he exceeded the expectations. That's not an overreaction. Call what it is. This dude is by far our best wide receiver. Could he be the best player on this team? In all honesty, like you start to think about that. People say Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman on the defense side of the ball. Is that just more like an availability bias? Because we know what we have from them in terms of we saw them last year, and then Danny Stutzman played at a really high level. Deion Burks was caged up at Purdue, and now he comes over here and he's going to be in a high potent offense. And when it comes down to it, with Jalil Farouk, being hurt, and Nick Anderson, we didn't get to see him. Like, could Deion Burks be a guy who gets like 10 catches, 120 plus yards a game? Like he could be that possession guy in the slot, and he could be in the argument for the best player on this team. And I'll listen to it throughout the whole season.
I think that's a fair addition to throw him into the mix for that. And I got to say, I hadn't really thought about it. The man had been suffering at Purdue, and he's just been freed. He's been freed to do what he wants in this system.
Stare behind him at all times.
Got to be horrifying. Got to be horrifying. And they, first of all, by the way, Purdue needs to add a Purdue Pete helmet. That would be great. Just like with the eyes. Just put the eyes on the side of the helmet.
Only eyes, no face.
Only eyes. It would be horrifying. I'm all about that idea. But no, that has to be exciting, freeing, and it's a system that really fits, a burner wide receiver. And I mean, I'm certainly excited about it. I will say, that having Jackson Arnold a couple times, having him throw long balls, it felt good to see, an overthrow once or twice rather than an underthrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's for sure. Like first thing, it was the most obvious thing. You see this all the time in spring games. Like, goes back to pass, immediate deep ball to Jaden Gibson. Like, come on, we all knew that was coming, but Jaden Gibson still separated. It was a little bit wobbly to the middle of the field. Not the best throw from Arnold, but you knew he was going to come out slinging. And really, what it comes down to with Arnold, and we kind of talked about this last week in terms of if you're talking about overreactions from the spring game, QB1 is the one thing not to overreact to, but you want to see confidence in this guy because everyone's going to be like, oh, water under the bridge of what happened in the bowl game last year versus Arizona. He changed his number. It's a new Jackson. He's taking on this new leadership role. But in all honesty, he's going to have that monkey on his back from the bowl game, no matter how many people want to paint it in a different way until he goes out, not even the first couple games of the season, until he goes out and plays SEC and gives us a big, performance on national television or a big time opponent. He's going to continue to have that monkey on his back from the bowl game. It's as simple as that. So a guy that's going to be confident in this spring game, can throw deep balls and is not scared and is at least, overthrowing it, like you said, Bobby, that gives me some optimism. But we've still got a lot to see from him.
Yeah, absolutely. He is not a finished product at all. Still very young. And we've talked about it all the time. OU fans have been super spoiled by quarterback play. I mean, just look at as much as I love our guy Ty, that man was giving old Dylan Gabriel all he could handle, and he might be probably the second best quarterback in college football next year, maybe not, if not first, just because he's not running at a Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts level. And I think that's a good thing to have that high standard. But recently, thinking of recent quarterbacks, he has some big shoes to fill. And not every young phenom quarterback is going to be Caleb Williams, who can start from the go. And Arnold, I think we have high expectations, and I think he can fill them. But I think it's going to take a little bit of time for him to really fully come into his own, especially as Seth Luttrell starts installing his offense more. But I think what we saw was impressive. He looked better than he did. Obviously, it's a spring game. You're not going against a good defense that in Arizona last year. But you're going against the spring game team. But it was impressive. If you just look at the mechanics, if you look at how he processed the game, I was impressed. I was mildly impressed, but I'm not, spring game and quarterbacking. We've seen bad spring game performances lead to good seasons. Kyler was, we had an entire summer where we weren't sure if Kyler Murray was going to start, and then he wins Heisman. So,
yeah. I'll tell you what, just looking at the offense as a whole, everyone will talk about Deion Burks, and we're not going to hammer that into the ground because we already kind of had this segment on it. But overall, this offense, I don't know how much to really take from it. I feel like there's some bits and pieces, but they're not huge takeaways. Looking at the running back core, I'm really disappointed I didn't get to see Javonte Barnes out there. We had heard things that, he's back, close to his 100% health marker, and all of last year was going to be written up as a fluke because he never truly was healthy. And I don't know the reason why he's out. There's a lot of people that didn't play that we don't really technically know why. And him not being out there really disappointed me. I wanted to see him go out there and go make the runs that Caleb Hicks did. And I'm going to give all the props to Caleb Hicks. He looked like a bruiser and he was a great runner. But I think that this offense can open up a whole nother level if the Javonte Barnes we saw 2 years ago, not last year, but 2 years ago, and the guy that we thought we were getting out of high school turns into a guy that can be a 1-2 punch with Gavin Sawchuk.
Yeah, I will say Barnes, him not playing was definitely weird. I believe the reasoning was he wanted to give other guys reps, which is, was a little dodgy.
A good guy. He's always the first guy to congratulate people when they're coming off the field. And
yeah.
That seems weird though. I feel like if I was him, I want to go get mine, at least for a little bit, at least for a couple of drives, right? You don't have to sit out the whole game.
Yeah, and some of it was talking about the portal, which seems to be resolved. He's staying at OU from the latest that we've heard or I've read about on the matter.
Yeah.
So that's good at least. So maybe he was looking at that. Maybe it was health. I don't know. But I would have loved to see more Javonte Barnes out there, or just any Javonte Barnes rather. But what we did see out of the running back room was exciting. It looks very deep. and again, stop me if you've heard this before. It's a deep running back room that I have a lot of optimism for. I felt like we felt pretty optimistic about it last year. A bit of a dud until the second half of the season, maybe back third even. But I don't know. I think Hicks is really exciting. I think the transfer from
Sam Franklin.
Sam Franklin from McNeese State, pretty exciting as well. It is McNeese State, right? Am I mixed up on my
that does not
directionals?
ring quite the bell.
It's not
UT Martin.
UT Martin. Sorry, Tennessee Martin. I think they're both blue and yellow, and that's where I got it mixed up. Anyways, I think that running back room is very exciting though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll say this. Caleb Hicks, Sam Franklin, they had a good day. How flashy was it? Not the most flashy, but still. These are guys that are projected to be your number 3, number 4 on your depth chart in terms of running back. So having solid days is a good thing. For the wide receiving crew, Bobby, it was Deion Burks and, a little bit of Jaden Gibson. Jaden Gibson gets that touchdown, was called back from an OPI. But I mean, other than that, very, very top heavy. The one guy that I thought looked the best, and I said, wow, honestly, I'm super surprised. Ivan Carrion, number 24. Did you notice him out there? I was not ready to be like, wow, this guy's good, but he's 6'6". He's a freshman, obviously wearing number 24, so it sticks out a little bit more. I thought he had a lot of good plays, a lot of good footwork on comeback routes, and I'm like, okay, I didn't really think much of him whenever he was coming into the recruiting class, but I mean, I don't know if I'm buying too much into it, but he looked pretty good.
Yeah, no, I mean, he did for sure, and that's definitely not a name you heard often on the Cruton Corner, if at all. So definitely didn't ring any bells at the time watching it, but hey, very impressive performance out there. So I don't know. I'm with you.
Maybe just a 6'6" guy wearing number 24 catching some balls. That it could just be as simple as that. But still, it's a freshman.
We've had spring game all-stars in the past, and he could possibly be that. You never know. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest takeaway though from the offense, we kind of talked about Deion Burks will always be the thing that'll be the most exciting, but the biggest takeaway of watching this is what transpired with the offensive line. Jacob Sexton primarily moving in at guard is really telling, and what the coaching staff thinks of Michael Tarquin at the tackle position. And then Jake Taylor going in and saying okay, I'm right tackle. All that talk about Spencer Brown in the offseason, kind of surprising, to tell you the truth. Seems like Wee Woo solidified at guard. And my biggest surprise, Bobby, and I'll ask you your biggest surprise after we talk about the offensive line. Biggest surprise, no snap problems. Josh Bates lived up to, the hype. He probably had so much pressure on his shoulders of all the people talking about, oh, we need to go get Branson Hickman, which we did. And because this guy cannot even snap it. And he came in as a specialized center. Good for him. I'm really proud of Bates.
Yep. Agreed. I feel like there was only one kind of high snap, and that was just it. But it wasn't anything remarkably bad like we saw.
Andrew Raymond last year.
Exactly. It was not anywhere in that territory, but there was one that floated a little bit high.
That's fine. That's fine. As long as you don't roll it, you bowling ball it into, I don't know, Jackson's legs. Come on. I mean, it's a big deal.
Snap it to the running back on accident.
Andrew Rame, I wish you the best coming up this weekend for the NFL draft. I would be absolutely surprised. He might get drafted. You never know. Bo Bean Bo's got such a reputation that people might take a stock on him in the 7th round, but I doubt it.
There are some awkward plays that you got to explain, starting with that Dublin one that I just referenced. Ugh.
That's for sure. But I mean, the offensive line looked good. It looked okay.
It didn't look awful.
It wasn't pitiful. That's the thing. It was not pitiful to the point where it's okay, this defensive line just manhandled them all the time. And I understand that changes when you don't see DJ Terry. But for the most part, I was really proud of the way that this team played. I think the tackles are probably the weakest point. I think a lot of the time the defensive ends got around, and especially PJ got a quick jump and got around the tackles on the outside. But we already know defensive ends are a strong point. So, that makes sense. But I was really proud of the offensive line, not because I thought they did amazing or great, but that they didn't have me on this podcast, starting off the podcast saying okay, what we are scared of is true and we need to completely overreact.
Right. I think we all, if you asked me last week what we're about to sit there and roast, it would have been the O-line. And they looked, the expectations were low, but they still surpassed them. They looked manageable. You still need some help in the portal. That's just the case regardless. They've gotten a little bit of help as
Big
is,
help. Branson
which will
Higman's such a
quite a
freaking
bit.
big deal for us.
Yeah, massive. You're right. Very big help, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, I'm sure. But they were passable, and that's good. They didn't embarrass themselves, and that is, in my opinion, pretty positive stuff.
Yeah. We skipped a position group, Bobby, and I've got to put you on the spot here. How disappointed are you in the tight ends? Because we had a lot of hype for the tight ends coming into this game, and let me tell you something, flat out eggs out there.
It was bad. And it was
Devon Mitchell was not what you thought it was going to be. All of that stock that you bought, oh man, it's crashing right now, Bobby.
He was MIA. Bauer Sharp had his issues from time to time, particularly on the blocking end. So it wasn't like he did great either. The whole room, just was not remarkable at all.
Well, and, tight end 3 being Cade McIntyre, who's, man, he needs to put on some weight. Like it's not a good look for our tight end room.
It's the spring game, and we always talk about, like, sometimes you'll have a unit that if a unit shines, particularly like we're talking about defensive ends, in turn there will be a unit that looks bad, and in this case it was the tight ends.
I'm disappointed Bauer didn't get a catch. Like I feel like they didn't really highlight the tight ends much at all in the offense. Maybe Bauer got like a target or two tops. They had him blocking a lot. Remember, this guy is a converted tight end. He's still going to be ironing out some of the kinks in terms of blocking as a tight end. That's going to be expected at this point in the spring, with his journey. I completely am okay with that. But Devon Mitchell, your man, I told you before the pod I was going to ask you your biggest disappointment. I was just waiting for you to say Devon Mitchell, but now it's kind of organically came up. He looked like a high school senior. It's as simple as that. He can look good in pads. He can look good whenever they're playing around in open practice. But, whenever it comes down to it, you got to realize that this kid is how old is that? 17, 18 at this point?
Yeah, that's crazy. And here's my thing. All my stock in Devon Mitchell, it's house money right now because of that. Because I have that card where
buy back in.
No, I could play the double standard, Jamison. If he plays really well, I'm like, wow, look how good he's doing. He's just 17. That's incredible. And if he plays bad, I'm like, well, he's 17. What do you expect? So I can have my cake and eat it too with the stock. It's perfect. It is so untouchably great until give it a couple of years. And if he's bad, then hey, no, there's no excuse at that point. But
you're playing both sides like Mac in Always Sunny.
I play both sides, so I always come on top. Yeah, exactly. You see the vision here, exactly.
Yeah, but slam on Devon Mitchell right now, Bobby, because now his stock's low. It is a thing that we love to do here on the Schooner Pod. We slam when stocks are low and we buy back in.
Never
now would be a great time.
We double down. Never hedge. We double down.
Oh, there's no hedging on this podcast. We're just not the most toxic people. Actually, I'm going to stop saying we. Boat Blake is the most toxic hedger ever, and he's never going to hear this, and I can just flat out say it. It doesn't even matter. The most toxic hedger ever. But yeah, tight end group, it's going to be a work. It's going to be a piece of work. Joe John Finley's got a lot to fix up come season time. Like Jimmy says in the chat, Roberts would be very helpful, especially for a guy who's been there and done that and has a lot of snaps under his belt and can be a good blocker and also kind of do a little bit in the passing game. So we've got a lot to see whenever it comes from the tight end group. If we want to have a full functioning, well-rounded offense, not like we did last year where Austin Stogner was just one-dimensional and didn't even do that well in terms of the passing game, we've got a lot to grow.
Agreed. And, yeah. Absolutely. We got to do more. And, look, Joe John, he's the co-OC now. This is his room. This is his time to step up, show him some love. I got to say, I will say this about Joe John, by the way. I'm not sure if they showed this on the broadcast or not. good old Joe John Finley and Zach Alley had a punting contest, which determined points. Joe John,
Of course.
solid punter, great punter. Zach Alley was awful. This was honestly, this is collusion against the defense, against the white team. Why did we ever think that was a good idea? Poor Zach Alley was completely out of his element. He was just shankopotamusing things right into the sidelines. It was not even a contest. They legitimately gave points to the red team because Joe John Finley could just kick it straight. So
yeah, Zach Alley did not play in college, right? He just went straight to Clemson as a student. And that's how he got into like as a student assistant and then a graduate assistant. So, I mean, how much athleticism is there? It's kind of hard when you're going against a former D1 athlete.
Yeah, he looks like an athletic enough guy, but Joe John he started for OU.
Right.
Yeah, come on. Anyways.
Yeah. And he's the specialty. He's part of the special teams coaching staff. So like that's no fair. But whatever. That's just another collusion of the scoreboard, just doctoring the whole points.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm glad we're not counting that towards the weekend spread, or else I would have a serious qualms to bring up with the scoring system.
Yeah, screw it, Bobby. I said earlier in this podcast, I was going to ask you what's your biggest surprise from the spring game. And if we have not already brought it up, do you have anything that you've thought of, like your biggest surprise?
Other than General Booty's like speed, which like that's actually the real answer. It doesn't. Yes. General Booty, that was probably his highlight playing on Owen Field. I don't think he'll ever have a moment like that, or have many moments at all on Owen Field, given how that quarterback room, the depth is shaking out. Michael Hawkins looked great, by the way. I thought. And then Casey Thompson hanging out on the sideline. So
all quarterbacks look good running in the spring game.
Yeah, you have a blue shirt. I think honestly, if anything, that highlights everything. That running like as a quarterback in the spring game doesn't mean anything. General Booty had a 34-yard touchdown. It was incredible. Yeah. Anyways, so that was kind of my initial biggest surprise.
That's a fun one.
Burks being as good as he was up there. And we've already kind of talked about the surprises. In terms of disappointments,
I've got one for you.
Yeah. Is it? Can I take a guess?
Yes.
Is it Jaron Kanek?
Well, I let's talk about the hot mic, because I heard that.
Yeah, we got
and I go, uh-oh, as everyone was in like the Sooner world. Screw it. We can talk about that. I'll leave my other disappointment for the end, because I guess it'll kind of organically come up after we talk about the defense. And now that's kind of a little teaser for what my disappointment is, and now everyone probably knows. But yeah, woof. Dusty is such he is in the Mount Rushmore of current media personalities in terms of, if his opinion of a certain OU football player is one way, you really, really take into account. Right. You have like the local beat reporters and everything. They're not really going to say certain stuff like that. Dusty, if you hear that something like that off a hot mic, yikes. And it's not like, I don't think Jaron's going to be like, okay, I heard that and my confidence is shot. That's not his personality. But I mean, it really does kind of reinforce what we've been saying as fans. This is something that needs to get fixed ASAP.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's pretty damning, and I think, it's one of those things where I put truth serum in a guy. We literally saw truth serum in Dusty Dvorak, who, he's that perfect combination of a national guy who's risen through the ranks, as a color commentator, but also with deep OU ties, who really cares about the program.
And so he knows this team too. There's sometimes like you'll get guys who go to and call national games and they're from OU and they kind of know decently a couple of the big names. He knows the nitty gritty of like 3-4 deep of this OU football team.
Right. Yeah, no, he is that perfect combination of, just a national general ball knower, but also he knows OU very, very well. Mm-hmm. So it's woof, but also he wasn't wrong at all. It was a really bad performance from Kanek, and it's if you count like a lot of what we saw last year, it's he's going in the wrong direction, and that's like the worst thing you can do. And he's going in the wrong direction in the worst possible position group to be regressing in, because
Mm-hmm.
that line room is awesome. It is deep, it is ferocious, and it is competitive as hell. And it feels like, every time you see Kanik get worse, there's a new challenger to try to, take up snaps in that room. So um very frustrating. He doesn't strike me as a guy who will portal just because, he came
I
here for
don't know.
Venables.
And him and
Not at
Danny are
this
attached
time.
to the hip, and his lifestyle here is probably just too good. I would be so surprised
Right.
because he's still
That's
going to get a lot of opportunities to win his role this season, not
mhm,
just because he played off in a spring game.
right. This is yeah. It's not great. It's not looking great, but he seems like the guy who hopefully can dig deep and get better. But
How about this, Bobby? Let me turn it because I'm not trying to be too cocky or jinx it. And I'm like we said, we are not in the I don't want to be in this freaking hedging business. I'm so freaking tired of hedging in terms of sports. I'm just gonna say it like it is. Like, I don't think Kanik's gonna transfer because it just doesn't give off the vibes of that. Is
right.
that coming out and him doing poor and then people like us talking about it and other people on Twitter talking about that make guys that could have portaled from this linebacker room that we're very nervous about because the guys in terms of our linebacker depth are probably the guys that were coming down to this April deadline saying like, could they enter the portal? Guys like Kobe McKenzie or Lewis Carter, guys that we love so much, but probably wouldn't get much playing time, make them have a little bit of hope that they actually could come in and get a decent role on this team because of Jaren Kanik's problems and now what the media and overall public's perceiving him to be.
I I think that is actually a very good point. That there's some blood in the water, so to say, and might be worth sticking around if you can earn your way in. Not only that, but last year, what we saw with Kip Lewis coming in and taking that spot, it shows that you can earn your way up. You can earn your keep. You can earn snaps. Um, so I think there's enough, sort of bait there to keep them there, keep them working. I don't. I think we'll lose probably somebody. I thought
Mm-hmm.
Kobe looked great. I think he won't be the
He played
one.
really well.
Yeah, but
You never
I
know.
think we'll
I'm
probably
worried about guys like him.
yeah, losing like one or a two one one or two guys. I think that could happen. Depends on if there are any Raiders out there dropping bags. It could be around. Because yeah, I mean the game's changed. Hypothetically, you could fight it and win something like that, or be a day one starter at I don't know Missouri.
Missouri. Gosh, we're having to fight them right now for Dominic Williams, but we'll see how much money gets thrown around there.
Yeah,
Oh
and
my God.
we'll talk about that later. Yeah,
We'll have a
he
little
didn't
portal talk at the end.
he left. Yeah, he left Norman without
We knew that was
signing.
gonna happen.
So
But yeah,
you did say though you're like
I
don't
wanted
let
it to
this guy
happen.
leave.
I wanted it. I
You're
was
trying to
telling him.
manifest it.
Yes, I tried to. I'm sorry, but this guy said he was going to take his visits, and he did. I just wanted to convince him with a large
Yeah,
amount of cash. We should have given him a McDonald's bag, but we didn't.
we need to implement the scooter pod NIL budget. There
But
you
we're
go.
going to take it to the roulette table first because we could double this. We could.
That should be our pitch. That should be our pitch to him. All right, we're gonna give you this much money, and then we're gonna put it on black.
Now, listen to me. You could have this money, but we could double it. And it's going to be on electric roulette at Riverwind Casino. You hearing me out on this one?
Yeah. Oh God,
I'll say
that great times.
yeah, that was a fun night, but whatever. One guy that I was
Yes.
really, really happy with, like that I was worried about coming into this, I guess off season and just general in this coming season is PJ Adebaware. I thought that guy looked great. He had a lot of good like steps off the break and got around to tackles. Now, we knew he could do that. We knew he was athletic enough to get speed and get around the left and right tackles. But just seeing him do that, really got me excited. Obviously, his ceiling is not going to be can he get around tackles with speed and length and be disruptive? We know he can be disruptive no matter what. But can he get a second move to where he could go in and finish the plays. That's always going to be the next up in terms of guys like him. But still, seeing him being a game changer at the defensive end is such a breath of fresh air, because I feel like for three or so years now, we've talked about how anemic our pass rush is, and PJ was supposed to be like the messiah that saved us in terms of that. So I'm just really hoping we can get some pressure that can push the quarterbacks out or in like further up into the pocket.
Yeah, the rumor of PJ Adeboar's demise, was greatly exaggerated because he looked really, really good on Saturday. And I think that's kind of the case with sometimes with these 5 stars get way excited about them, over the moon, and if they don't pan out the same way you kind of thought they would early, that doesn't make them bad. I feel like there's so much instant gratification, especially in the portal era. And, I think some people were ready to, or maybe not ready to bury him, but, maybe looking at selling some PJ stock. As a PJ stock holder over here, I'm feeling very good right now. The diamond hands on PJ
I
Adebawore and
feel like PJ
Hassan
stock is
McCullough.
like, I bought a Disney and I am holding it. It's like, yes, you bought a guy who was like a top 5, top 10 recruit. We had all
Nice
like
risky move there, Bobby.
there you
bought
go.
Apple. In 2024, buying Apple.
I am diamond handing PJ Adebawore, and there's nothing you can tell me to sell.
Oh, yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, not exactly a bold call or anything.
Yeah, I was happy the way PJ played. It's just, a breath of fresh air. Ethan was Ethan. He did his thing. Trace was Trace. I thought Cade Wooler looked pretty good. Transfer edge. I thought he, showed some things that he could be a kind of a guy this year. All in all, I was pretty happy with the defensive ends. And that's probably the hardest position to play in terms of the spring game. And so you really take everything with a grain of salt in terms of how they play, because you really can't be 100% in your pass rush. You probably have to be 85, 90% tops. So that really limits your ability to get to the quarterback.
Yeah. That is true. That is true. What did you think of the new guys, David Stone and Jaden Jackson? I feel like maybe I had too much hype for them. And I knew I had too much hype for them, so I'm not properly disappointed. But they didn't, exactly stun me, which is fun.
They didn't pop off. Like Jane Jackson, I feel like I noticed more than Stone just watching it through. And like they made some good plays, but obviously it's really going to show. Like these guys have been there and done that, and they're going to make some plays in practice. And, when people are like worn down and they can come in and they have that extra step of motivation, they're going to do some things. But it's so obvious right now that everyone buying stock, and we keep talking about stock. I mean, just stop saying that. That Stone and Jackson could be big time players for us next year. Need to read the tea leaves. Jermaine Lowell just committing to the Sooners, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But OU saying we want 2 interior defensive linemen in the portal, and that's 2, not just 1, 2. Like there is an obvious tea leaf saying, hey, we need more guys that are big, been there, and can get ready for SEC offensive lines. And even though those guys will be there one day, and I'll say that definitively because they've shown so much hope in the beginning of their young careers, right now it's going to be very difficult as an interior guy. Interior guys usually take a little bit of time to bloom.
Yep. That's just how it is, specifically with that position. It's hard to be a day one guy, in a very physical position, especially in the SEC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're a skill position on offense. You're a running back, wide receiver, even quarterbacks. You can do that kind of thing. A little bit on the cornerback side and the safety side, you might see it a little bit. Defensive line, it is hard. You do not see it that often in terms of defensive line. If it's usually an edge or an outside linebacker that's shown it. Interior defensive line, that is few and far in between that can do that kind of thing.
I mean, even Gerald McCoy. Yeah, he didn't even play much his freshman year.
Mm-hmm. I like the one name that comes to my head. I think Ndamukong Suh, did he do decent during his freshman year? But I'm not even sure about that, to tell you the truth. I can't even tell you.
but he wasn't like Sue then, He was like
No.
kind of all right.
And I don't know, and that's just maybe my brain just tricking me. I can't think of someone, in terms of the interior defense line off the top of my head. And I'm sure there's a lot of examples that people are listening can say, but it just shows you that usually at each position group, I can think of just some random guy who's done well as a freshman. Interior defensive line's a lot harder to think. So it's going to be a big in terms of us, filling those spots and getting guys that can kind of compete versus the bigger bodies of SEC opponents. What'd you think of the defensive backs, Bobby? Did anything stand out to you? Because it was really thin because of the amount of guys that we didn't have playing. But all in all, like, cool. Like, how much do I don't really know how much I need to talk about it, to tell you the truth.
They were fine. It's just not really, but yeah, but I'm with you. There's not really much to say about the defensive backs. It was just, yeah, it's fine.
Boganowski had a big
remarkable.
hit, and then he had a blown coverage. Like, it's a freshman. That's going to happen. He had a good and a bad. It evens out.
I liked his effort. He was going hard, like he had his opportunity and he was going for it, but so I like the energy there. Definitely control a little bit, but it's like I don't know, like a middle schooler hopped up on Mountain Dew or something. He's just running all over the field. It was great.
Yeah, that was nice. Okay, let's get to my biggest disappointment. It's got to be Tyler Kellner. That's got to be the missed field goal, 45-yarder. Man, we didn't need this. We didn't need this early. We can't. I'm in Zach Schmidt's field goal. Let's just talk about Zach Schmidt's field goal. This dude punched it to the sky, and on the TV cast, I don't know what it looked like in the stadium, because half the times I'm watching field goals in the stadium, I can't tell you for what, if it's going in or not, until I hear that it's good. But my God, we can't already be having missed 40-yard field goals.
No, we're down bad there. Keltner, seeing him come out with the ones was exciting. I'm like, yeah, there we go. We got new blood in there.
Yeah.
And then he made the first little chippy, and then the long one just. I mean, I will say I couldn't tell if it went in. Daria, my wife was like, "Wee!" Like it. She thought it went in, so she was very excited. Clearly didn't. But
it reminds me whenever my wife cheered whenever I was at a soccer game, and she cheered at the end of the game because she thought we won and we lost by 2.
It's taking every bone in my body to not do the down to dunk my wife, but
exactly.
Yeah, we can't steal that pot or that bit, anyways. But that's hilarious. You thought they won. She was rooting for the wrong team the whole time.
I like, this game has been out of it the whole second half. I'm supporting you, but goodness, yeah, it's disappointing. And punt team still looked like we're going to get a bunch of 40 to 45 yarders. Special teams is going to be another year where we're going to be clenching our teeth. But
what'd you think of Peyton Bowen returning punts?
How much am I going to buy into that? Because I feel like the jersey colors impacts that. So they only had to put defensive people back there.
No, they didn't actually. They just had them out there regardless of team.
So what I'm trying to get at is, so offense people that would punt would be wearing red, correct?
Right.
So if they put back an offensive player, they would have to wear red.
Well, so that wasn't necessarily true though, because I feel like I saw, like for example, on kickoffs, the kicker was wearing red and everybody else was wearing white.
That is true. I'm going to be honest. I don't know, because I feel like I saw one other defensive back return a punt that I wasn't really like convinced that was going to be something in the regular season.
Yeah.
Whoever's returning it, I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to run with that. But I don't know how much of what I'm saying is right or wrong there.
Yeah. I don't think it's that big of a deal, like I feel like people talk about it a lot, but usually it's just whoever's going to do the fair catch motion. So
yeah, let's talk transfer portal, because this is like the big thing that's going on right now. Obviously, as of like 20 or so minutes ago, Jermaine Lowell from Louisville, interior defensive line, 300-pounder, big time guy, committing to Oklahoma, not taking any more visits, just going ahead and committing to us. That was a big deal. That was a guy that I'm sure made a great offer to in terms of NIL, and we could lock it up without him going to go and look at any other offers. That's going to be big time from us. But like I said earlier in this podcast, we said we wanted to. And Dominic Williams is that guy. We know that Dominic Williams can be a game changer into what we can do on Oklahoma's defense next year. And he is wanting to go out and take his visits. I think it's Texas and Missouri, I think, are his visits. I can go and I'm going to double check it right now. But
it's
this
Texas
is a guy
and
you'd be able to
Missouri.
witness.
Texas and Missouri canceled his Colorado visit, and he has like a maybe on an Oregon visit. So
yeah. So I mean, it's you hear Texas, you hear Missouri with us. The price is going to keep going up. It's going to get higher and higher, and there is a strategy with this. Obviously, like we were saying last week, is you get them in first and you try to shut the door on things. But that position, interior defensive lineman in the transfer portal, is such a position of need for so many teams around the country that it's going to be a hard get to get them to not look at other options.
Right. And, even though we're the first one to get him in, which means we had the earliest impression. We did get him in for the spring game. Missouri and Texas had it on the same, also played on that Saturday as well. So you did kind of give them the full shebang in terms of a presentation. So Texas and Missouri, in terms of that, they won't really have that. But at this point, it comes down to the money backs. What you're offering NIL wise. So I don't know. I think it's going to be intriguing to see how that pans out. I think OU's NIL, I think it really can compete better than I think a lot of people think. I think there's a narrative that OU's broke, so they can't run with, Missouri and Texas. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think the way they handle things can be a little bit more prudent than just throwing gobs of money at everything, which we'll see how sustainable that is. But
yeah, and I know some people have been talking about, I'm not as much worried about Texas because they just got a interior defensive lineman and the kid from Arizona, Bill Norton. And they're like, maybe Dominic's not going to want to go there. I mean, we just got Jermaine Lowell, who also just visited with him at the same exact time, and probably their vision were talking about putting them together on the defensive line. Right. So, I don't know how much Texas getting one doesn't mean that they can get a second. And I obviously don't have any Texas inside knowledge to know that, hey, they had a spot for one or a spot for two. But Dominic Williams is the kind of guy that you make room for. You'll find a spot. And whether that be with telling a scholarship person to get away and go ahead and just bully the portal, that's, I'm sure happens plenty in college football. This is the type of guy that you do that for. So I'm not going to count any team out. He's for Missouri, Bobby, he's a California guy. At least that makes me feel a little bit better that he's not some kind of Midwest Missouri guy, because I'd automatically just say, screw it, just stop getting your hopes up.
Well, I will say the Missouri thing is more impactful if they're actually in the state. If they're like a high school recruit, because of Missouri's inherent NIL edge they have with that. But there is a bit of a show me state type of pride or whatever the hell they're doing over there. So,
and so is this where we transition our conversation to Eli Drinkovitz?
We're not. No, we're not.
Blake is like, okay, now I'm listening.
He's ready now. He's fired up. He's been wanting that for weeks. No, we are not talking about that. We are not.
Yeah. Dominic Williams.
There are things called slander and libel laws that usually we don't adhere to. But
completely, anyways. Yeah, that's fair. There's no rules on podcasts, but
there absolutely are rules.
Bobby, you had to.
Caleb Williams hasn't hurt us, man.
Bobby did say that he was going to commit a felony and eat a crow on the podcast one time. So let it be known that he did say he was going to commit a felony.
Yeah, that's funny. Anyways, let's move on.
Yeah, but I think just putting a bow on Dominic Williams, it's kind of crazy to think that we wouldn't really be having this opportunity if we weren't going to the SEC because the interconference kind of thing. So another positive of going to the
I
SEC.
don't think that's an issue with the Big 12, though.
Is it? Or is it
No,
only an
no.
SEC thing?
It's only an SEC thing
Oh,
because,
really? Oh,
like,
interesting.
remember, like Tyler Guyton, going from TCU to OU wasn't an issue.
Oh, you're right. Then why
Yeah,
does
yeah.
SEC only do that? That doesn't make any sense.
It's a conference only rule.
That's stupid.
I don't know. It's some weird stuff that Greg Sankey, brewed up that, limits that. But, I think the Big 12 used to kind of have is a similar-ish rule, but in a different era, which was one of the reasons why Baker Mayfield almost didn't have his last year of eligibility.
Mhm.
But it got ratified and changed, so there's that. But yeah, it's a thing in the SEC, which is very weird.
Okay. Well, I guess I never knew that. Well, the more you know.
Yeah.
Other than that, Bobby, I think that kind of like finishes up our whole thing in terms of the spring game. Do you have anything else that you wanted to talk about?
No, that's about it. It was, just kind of a spring game. I'm happy that they have them. OSU does, not during the spring game this year. And, Mike Gundy recently said he, wished he could never do a spring game. And, my thing is, even though the game didn't matter, anytime you get down to Norman and get to, get on campus and get into the stadium and, hang out, it's worthwhile. So I'm thankful that spring games exist, even though the football isn't exactly the best in the world.
Yeah, totally agree. Next week, give a little precursor of what we're going to do next week, because I don't know if this is actually people listening are going to be as excited as we are to do this. And this might be just one of those podcasts that we get super hyped about and we think is going to be really funny and fun to
20
do.
people watch it.
But screw it. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Yes. So we're beyond excited about this. I think this kind of came up as a joke, but we ended up saying screw it and doing it anyways. I thought about this the entire spring game, in fact, walking around campus. We're going to do a tier maker, essentially ranking or like rating almost every building on campus at OU. Not everyone. Like there are random ones that do not like I have no comments on, but we're going to be putting them into tiers. So we'll be debating how good is Dale Hall? Is Dale Hall an A tier or is it the worst? Like mainly we're going to be spending most of our time just completely trashing the blender. And if you didn't go to OU, I'm sorry, you're probably there's a chance none of this will make any sense to you. But if you went to OU, this is going to be a blast from the past, and y'all should tune in, chime in the comments, and you might actually affect the tier list. Overall, it's going to be a really fun time. I'm excited. I know you have some hot takes on buildings. It's gonna be a nice little trip down memory lane as we're getting close to graduation for all those youngins. But it's kind of crazy to think, Jamison. It's been 10 years. It'll be 10 years this fall since we stepped on campus at OU.
Oh, so, God.
I know.
I miss those days. Bring me back. Bring me back.
I know. It's weird, but I don't know. It's gonna be fun. Talking about and reflecting on that. So yeah, if you're a OU grad or even just attended OU, you will not want to miss that one. So it should be fun.
Cool. Well, let's sign us out, Bobby.
Yeah. So that's been the Scooter Pod. Thank you all so much for listening on your favorite podcast app or watching on YouTube. If you are on YouTube, make sure to give this video a like. It really helps us out with the algorithm, all of that good stuff. It would be very, very helpful as we continue to grow this podcast. And look, the more you help us grow, the better content we get, or you get, and the more content you get, and it helps keep us doing this thing. And if you're listening on podcast form, make sure to give us a review. We are, love 5 stars, love comments. So that would be great as well. But until then, this has been the Schooner Pod. We will talk to y'all next time. Have a good one, everybody.